This might be. I have this done. I gotta go back to the door, but I'm sitting right now.
So this is the Center for Spiritual Living. We've been here 12 years or so, and we've got a whole lot of things going on, which we'll present as we go along. But first, we're going to have a little meditation and invocation by Bonnie Gonzalez, who's our most recent practitioner person.
So, I'm Bonnie, and what I just would invite you to do right now is just take that collective breath that always shifts us from one place to the next. Just taking that collective breath that always brings in the divine. Just close your eyes. I invite you to close your eyes if that feels good, if that's comfortable for you. And noticing that when you close your eyes, your thoughts immediately turn inward. And as your thoughts turn inward, just explore that internal landscape. So go within and just meditate for the next few minutes on being filled with this love and protection. Just embody that. And I am just in awe and wonder and in jubilation for the realization of knowing why we are together here today. And I just offer this prayer. I just release my word into law that always says yes, yes, yes. And I anchor this prayer with, and so it is. Thank you. Thank you.
The voices in my memory are heartless and unkind. I would never say to anyone the things I say in my own mind.
So the topic today is the spirituality of imperfection. I didn't make it up. There's a book about it that I highly recommend. It came out about 30 years ago. I read it maybe 25 years ago. And after I kind of remembered it, so I thought it'd be a good topic. And I picked it up. It's by my bedside, by my bed for the last 2 weeks. And Arlene's asked me, my wife asked me, are you going to read it?
Good
So,
one.
well, I might get through the preface. The first two, the book is actually pretty heavy. I can't believe that I at one point thought this was relatively easy reading. And what I found is that my mind, my thinking part doesn't work as well as it used to, but my feeling part is much more active.
Yeah.
It's activated. And so when I read something, it's a different function, a different way of being now than even 25 years ago. So it's Ernest Kurtz and Catherine Ketchum. It's from the 12-step tradition. And they have another book, I don't know if she co-authored that one too, but Not God is the name of it, which is a seminal book for people who are interested in this tract. So spirituality of imperfection. What does that mean? What is that about? What is quote regular spirituality? Well, and they have a lot of discussions about that, as well as spirituality versus religion. If that one kind of gets what are you talking about? This is a place to have a very interesting discussion of it with yourself and your friends. My teacher, Reverend Francis, is just retiring. And I've been thinking about her, and one of the phrases that she used fairly often was, "You're absolutely perfect as you are," or "We are absolutely perfect as we are, and we've got a whole lot of work to do. So what does that mean? Up, she says, louder, a little more volume. See if that works. I'm experimenting with different mics. I forgot I had these. Peggy needed mics for the conference, and well, she wanted these mics, and I said, do I have those mics? And we discovered them, and that was good. Well, if it's good enough for the convention, why not use it here? And we will have a little bit of time to reflect on the convention towards the end, because how many people here knew that there was a convention? How many people went to some of it? Not too many, but for those who did, it's pretty much a life-changing phenomenon. And thank you, Reverend Rebecca and Peggy, for being the two major dynamos who made that happen. So perfection, I'm perfect. What does that mean? Well, to me it means that in my essence, I know, deep down inside, that this is a wonderful, spectacular universe that we inhabit. That the divine or creation itself, the universe itself, is constantly expressing and creating and is full of love and beauty. And that I am an expression of that. And in that place, I am absolutely perfect, and so is every person here. Even in our stinkiest moments, when we've done things that we don't want to confess even to somebody who we can confess to. We don't want to confess to ourselves. But most of us have a lot of, that wasn't so good. I could have done better. I could have been a contender. Anybody remember that line? Yeah, I could have been a contender. And I could describe different areas in my life where I had the sense of what was possible and something I could be. And somehow I always turned out less. Now, spirituality and knowing this perfection is very helpful. But then the question is how to let go of that feeling. The ones that got so well projected, not only in the words, but in the emotion of his song, that most of us can relate to and say, oh yeah, I got that. How do we deal with that? The Science of Mind answer, by and large, is prayer, which is basically what Bonnie gave as part of her invocation. And it's often, we have practitioners. The practitioner, or a person acting as a practitioner, can see that in the person who is currently feeling caught up in their story.
Yeah.
And part of the workshop with Kathy Ann over the weekend was to not join them in the story, which is a temptation. Yeah, that sounds really bad. God, I remember, I had that too. And obviously we always, not always, most of us enjoy having somebody who can confer that, whatever we're feeling is perfectly okay and normal. But the difference is remembering and being able, as a practitioner, to see in the other person that is not their deepest truth. That's not who they really are. And they have it within them to change their thinking, change their perspective, change their way of processing to a form that gives them the joy and happiness that they deserve, that we all deserve, the abundance of life. So that's a sort of the plot summary of the Science of Mind part. Most of us, certainly I, when I first got into it, I was fairly prosperous, but I wanted greater success, greater recognition, greater this. I wanted more. So there's a very strong wanting more part that for most people is their beginning. Wanting the, what is the thing? The Porsches, princes, and palaces are the three things that people and in the tradition, as it went along, it started with physical healing, and then with relational healing, and then with kind of third string along, oh yeah, we'd be good to have some money too. And that's, you know, wonderful. But after all that, there's still that something more. And that feeling that is nearly universal of somehow not being enough. Not good enough, not big enough, not strong enough, something not enough. It's not just about not having enough, but it's about not being enough. And the work then is not about getting out and, you know, figuring out how to make a living, which is very useful, by the way. You know, my contribution to the men's group for among the Mexican guys is to teach all the things that I really wanted to let go of. I went to a military school, a medical school, did research, and was pretty much go get it done, kind of almost like Peggy and Rebecca, get stuff done. And it's very useful. And if you don't have the capacity to do that, you're going to be pretty frustrated. And so I contribute to the men's group in that group. But yeah, there's that balance. Being an open-hearted person is a great thing. And it's good for your sex life, and it's good for a lot of things. They generally do pretty well relationship-wise, at least starting relationships. They do pretty well starting businesses, sort of, or at least having good ideas that the follow. Okay. The question becomes then, and why there is a spirituality of imperfection, is realizing that where we come from, who we are, in some sense, is imperfect. As perfect as we are, we're also absolutely imperfect. And I have one paragraph I want to read from this lovely book, if I can manage a book and a microscope.
Need some help there, young man, open-hearted
Kind
young
of
man?
late. Okay, the core paradox that underlies spirituality is the haunting sense of incompleteness, of being somehow unfinished, that comes from the reality of living on this earth as part, and yet also not part of it. For to be human is to be incomplete, yet yearn for completion. It is to be uncertain, yet long for uncertainty, or long for certainty. To be imperfect, yet long for perfection. To be broken, yet crave wholeness. All these yearnings remain necessarily unsatisfied. For perfection, completion, certainty, and wholeness are impossible precisely because we are imperfectly human. Or better, because we are perfectly human, which is to say, humanly imperfect. That is a different approach to life than most of us were brought up with. As I read it, and when I first read it, I said, that's it. For me, it was a perfect statement of the human condition as I've experienced it. Maybe not for you, maybe yours would be somewhat different worded, or maybe totally different. But spirituality of imperfection is based on acceptance and acknowledgement and recognition of this paradox of seeking perfection, but to be imperfect. To want to be whole, but there's always a lack of wholeness at the same time that there's wholeness. And how to live with that. And as practitioners of science of mind, to help not only myself, but others to do that. There are a lot of ways and things that could be said from that point. But I had a kind of a new understanding or a new possibility that I hadn't had, and it occurred at a Toastmasters meeting. So in our men's group, as I've talked about this, some of you here, part of what we do is say, you know, what, if something's going on for us, there's a problem that usually, whatever, you know, the question is, what are we feeling that make, you know, what is the feeling of this problem? And part of what we do is kind of go back, well, you know, you're having that problem with this relationship, how about the last one? And the one before that, and you know, what's the common denominator, and what, basically, what were you thinking, what was your attitude, what was your perspective that you brought to that situation that made that reality? Does that make sense to anybody? That seems to be one way of talking about it. It isn't the same thing as doing it. And of course, that's certainly one of my shortcomings is I can see things and say things a lot better than I can do them. I'm not always so good on the execution part. So I'm at this Toastmaster group, and what they do is you have prepared speech, which requires some work and thinking about it, having a topic, and they have a structure for that. But in addition, they have extemporaneous speaking. And the person who leads that will ask a question to each person. It'll usually be on some sort of theme. And the one that I got was, as I heard it, what is the gift of circumstances or experiences you've had, situations that occurred in your life that you at the time couldn't have seen, but in retrospect can see? One of my realizations is that age has not brought me wisdom. But it confirms upon us perspective. I read a nice story something my wife and I were reading in the morning, and it was a perspective from a 40-year-old person's point of view, their teenage and adolescence and such, as though they knew what it was all about, because they had the perspective of being 40. And we just shook our head and smiled at each other and said, wait till they're 75. The perspective does provide something to it. So I started remembering, just flashing through my mind, the things that had been wow. One, for example, was my sister was pregnant with her first child. I spent the summer with her. I was doing work, on summer break. I think I was mowing lawns in a cemetery, pretty exciting. But we would walk each evening, and I really got to know my sister and fell in love with her. Before that, she was this big person that got all the attention and could do everything that I couldn't do anything. So, it came down time for delivery. And my father, who is a family practitioner, was in the role of father and not doctor. And I was with him, waiting and waiting. And there was problems with her delivery. And I got to be with my father in that time of deep concern. And to know my father in a way that I had not appreciated. To see that the depth of his love and just feel it, and to be included in his concern and kind of vicariously doing it, even though I really didn't have much sense of either the danger or I wasn't really thinking about what might happen really. And his state became even more clear to me as I went on in life. I knew the facts of his past, but not what it was about. He had been married to another woman before my mother, and that woman died as complications of childbirth. And so my father walked in there not just as a physician, And not just as a father, but as the person who had experienced that. And for me, it was a difficult position, as was some of the other things that I experienced with my father. My mother's depression, blah, 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 and including a time when she was hospitalized and receiving shock treatments and such for the depression. And to be, quote, home alone, to be together with my father, and to be present in that moment, in those moments when I really didn't understand what was going on. I was 14, and it's not that I understood mentally, but I got to be present with that. And I had several other kinds of situations like that. My own addictive problems, deep problems. Each of us probably has 4 or 5. Wow. If you had to remember difficult times, you could probably get at least 4 or 5 that were like, yeah, these are difficult times. The beauty of that moment for me was realizing that those times, that experience, those experiences are not troubling to me now. I am not disturbed. I do not relive them. I do not have PTSD from the calamities of my life, even including probably the hardest one, which was the death of our daughter. So that sadness is still present for me. I know that and I feel it. But I am well in the sense that I can say, and I know, that those were absolutely part of life, my life, that I would not be the same person now if any one of those things had not happened. To be able to totally embrace and say hallelujah. God is good. Knowing that terrible stuff, a lot worse than anything I've experienced, is the daily norm of many, many people. Knowing that there's infinite suffering, that to say to somebody who is in infinite suffering, it'll be all right. Screw that. That just doesn't, it isn't enough. It isn't even true. But knowing that from my experience and what I've seen and what I now understand and to a degree embody, I can be with that person. I can be with that person. And as Kathy Ann said, I can look at their crown chakra. I don't have to jump into the cesspool. But I can be present and absolutely know that they're okay. That it is okay. Even if it is the moment before death, which supposedly is the biggest, it is kind of a big step. I'm curious about it, but I'm not exactly looking forward to it. But I'm feeling pretty good about the fact that it's going to be okay. This is what is the spirituality of imperfection. It is knowing our perfection. I can first grasp that intellectually, and then as I progress and have progressed, it's just, yeah, of course that's true. Life is wonderful, and we are all perfect. But knowing that in our imperfection, which we all have and it's all okay, there is nobody that isn't okay. Human level, sure, there are a lot of stuff out there. And I've got a lot of quote work to do. I have done some work, and I'm very grateful for what has happened to me. But I am very aware, and those who know me well will nod their head, oh yeah, Not Tim. When are you going to get over that or stop doing that? But that's the gift. So, being perfect, absolutely. A lot of work to do, yes. And the work is, in order to change our thoughts, our thinking, we have to know what we're thinking, or what our thoughts are, our beliefs are. The beliefs about what is not okay, or how I'm not okay, and know that the feeling that I get when I don't know, I walk into a room and nobody greets me, or I don't know anybody, or when I'm in a group and I have a brilliant suggestion and everybody kind of looks and shakes their heads and moves on. What am I believing about myself that makes that a problem? That I'm not quite enough. That I'm really not enough. That I'm not liked, and I'm not okay. To know that those things are still there. They're the gifts of the gods that allow me to be alive. So I'll end with the beginning. There is one life. That life is the life of the universe. It's God's life. And we and I, but we are that. And so it is.
Wow,
Yes.
wow. That is fantastic.
This is the idea. I've watched some church stuff. You get them going. You get them feeling good. And then what do? You pass the basket. They're feeling good. They're feeling better. Life is good. Yes, I can do that. Anyway, I'll let Peggy lead the offering.
You were mentioning, Tim, about your teacher, Francis Lorenz, and the things that you were about the Portia's Princes and Palaces. And it reminded me of my teacher, Reverend Sandy Scott, who taught us that all of that stuff is a result of manifesting the money. And that she always preached and taught that you get, when you're first learning the principles of science of mind and what it's all about, of the levels of consciousness and the manifestation of things, that the more important thing for you to do is to prove to yourself that the principles work by manifesting the change in your financial circumstance. Whatever it might have been at, it's going to be at something better as you move through that process. And so her, and the other part of her reason for it was, get the money so you find out that isn't all there is. That was the other part of what her thought was around that. So I'm thinking about the what if now in terms of the song we were listening to. Was that Nemo? Or David Alt? Or who is that?
That was Michael God.
Michael Gott. Oh, okay.
Oh,
Michael
pretty
Gott.
good.
Wow. Anyway, it was a great song. So what if now, were the moment you decided that this is about your life right here, right now, about manifesting greater money, and you are ready to be at the level of circulation, of the law of circulation, which is the principle of the spirituality practice that we teach in Science of Mind, that tithing is a spiritual practice. It's not about, I don't think I've got enough this month because I have to pay some bill or another, It's not that kind of thought process. So I just invite you to take out whatever you were thinking about giving and decide if you want to give that still, if you're going to give something more, or if you're ready to have the what if now were the moment for you today to determine that you're ready to play at a higher level and you're ready to receive at a higher level. Because what we know is that if we want something in the desire to have something, that we have to give more of that. If you want more love, give more love. If you want more friends, be a better friend. If you want to have better relationships in your life, be a better person in the relationship that you're in already. Those are the things that I've been taught at any rate, and I believe that this is the way it works with the money too. If you want more money, give more money. So we'll play the song here about I Am So Blessed, and those of you who are
interested to do so, certainly you may sing along, and we'll let Karen Drucker help us understand the true blessing of the imperfection of spirituality that we find.
I am so glad, I am so glad, I am so glad, I am so grateful for all that I have. I am so grateful, I am blessed.
We are also blessed, right?
Hey, Karen.
So we just give this up to God, that this is God giving to God. This is the divine giving to the divine. And in the law of circulation, we know that it comes back pressed down many, many times in all of our lives. It'll be creating even more for us to be grateful for as we understand the blessing that we are and the blessing that we are.
And so it is.
So for this benediction, a song comes to mind which is called Love, Serve, and Remember. And the part of that, most important for all of us, is remember. Recently read a very interesting thing, that we are the magnificence of God. We don't need to seek the divine, we are. We are the divine showing up in magnificently as each one of us in our magnificent humanity. But it's about remembering and turning within to remember that we are divine, and we are that divine having a great time showing up as human beings in all our imperfections. And when it gets too much, we need to remember. And then once we remember, we can then love and serve. And so it is.
And so it is.
I am as God created me, in the light, in the love, in the glory. I am as God created me, in the light, in the love, in the glory.